Hello everyone, I'm a Spin&Go regular. I play mostly on stars. My nickname is fig6. And today I want to show you how to work with this new feature of Simple Poker, GTOBase. Well, not quite as new. It's been around for some time, but not too long. The program is constantly being improved, and I think it's a decent alternative to skiers. And some people prefer Insta GTO, but I didn't quite like it. And I'll show you how this program works based on hand history analysis. I'll show you how I do it myself. Let's pick a hand. This one, for example, one of the hands I marked while playing. So we copy this hand and we paste it right here. The hand is uploaded in a very short period of time. And we have a hand tree right here. We have some actions for these particular hands. But if we click view, we will see the ranges, not just certain hands. Well, everything is pretty much fine. All the decisions that I've made throughout the hand are good. Where we see some mixing, some weighting, but yeah, the EVs are pretty much the same. And the only point where a solver thinks I'm wrong is my decision to check raise this hand as a bluff on the river. And I'm interested to see what range of hands I should check raise here, with this sizing, with check raise shove, smaller sizing, and how thinly our opponent can bet using this line, a bet check bet. Okay, we open this river spot. It opens in a new tab. And we can choose different actions. Let's choose check for the big blind, and we now can see how thinly small blind or button in this case can value bet. And let's pick a normalized view, because if we go with absolute, sometimes the weights are so small that we can't see the whole picture. And if we go with none, then all the cells will be just filled to the top. So yeah, normalized is pretty much our go-to option. So okay, he value bets pretty much all of his pairs, pretty standard. And by the way, right here we can change how the combos will be represented. Could be in actual number of combos, could be in percentages. And we can unselect all the combos and pick the ones that we are interested in, like second pairs, for example, or third pairs. And by the way, he even bets with some of his third pairs. Well, yeah, 7-6 offsuit with the diamond is a perfect hand because of the diamond blocker. Plus, we block the straight, but we block hands like 7-8 of diamonds, and it's probably indifferent on the flop, but these small things could really matter on the river, where both of our ranges are quite narrow. So yeah, probably this is the reason behind betting this hand. And yeah, let's select all the combos back, and he picked a pretty standard sizing on the river. Oh, I'm sorry, not the big blind, but the small blind. 2 BBs. And let's first see what raising size we prefer. And okay, for raise all in we have 10 and some percent, and smaller raises 2%, but I think we can ignore that and only raise all in, because in practice it's gonna be quite tough to split our ranges this way. Okay, let's see our bluffs. Nothing hands, king high hands, ace high hands, weak pairs. 5-3 and 5 deuce we should use as a bluff with a diamond. 7-5 with 7 of diamonds. And we prefer 7-5 to 9-5, although there are some calls here with 9-5 with a diamond. Let's check it out. Let's see the EVs, minus 20 BBs per 100 for the raise all-in, and minus 8 BBs per 100 for a smaller raise. Well, that's a lot, but not awful actually for the river spot. King 7 we use as a bluff quite often with the diamond, of course, king of diamonds or a 7 of diamonds. And for some reason, a 7 is quite a relative blocker, because even king 7 of clubs we sometimes use as a bluff. And yeah, we can find out by looking at our opponent's response. Let's choose the raise all-in size, and here's his reaction. Oh yeah, we block 8-7, a hand with which he gets some additional equity on the turn, then checks with it, and gets his nuts on the river. We also block 7-3, second nuts. So yeah, it doesn't seem that we block a lot of nut hands, but if we take a look at the percentages, we see that 7.5% of his hands are straights. And let's take a look at two-pair combos in his range. Oh yeah, and this is why we use sometimes 5x combos as a bluff, because he has some two-pair combos like 5-4 or Queen 5, and yeah, we see that he calls it with some low frequency, but on the river with narrow ranges this adds up. So yeah, we do like to block 5x combos with our bluffs, because we block some two-pair combos our opponent can call. And it's not about him folding a lot of two-pair combos with 5, it's about us blocking those combos in the first place. Well, I still think my bluff was justified, it's just that I should have picked different sizing. I should have gone all in. Now let's take a look at his whole calling range against a shove. Okay, he's supposed to sometimes call 10-8, 10-9 if he bets it in the first place. King 10 with the king of diamond is indifferent. And if our opponent fails to call with hands like 10-9, 10-8 with some frequency, if he fails to call with hands like Queen 3, Queen 2, and not so many players are ready to call hands like this, then my bluff should be profitable all in all. And yeah, according to GTO, my opponent played this hand pretty well. Okay, now we can close this tab so our browser don't get cluttered too much. And then we click this little red reset button to clear everything up. Okay, let's pick another hand to analyze. Okay, we pick a hand, we copy it to clipboard, and we paste it right here. Well, this spot is pretty thin, and I want to find out what range should I defend on the turn, and what hands should I call on different river cards. Okay, we can sometimes throw in a small raise, but very infrequently. And we see the bet sizes round up to a certain number, so 325 right here. And actually there's pretty much no difference. The strategy will not change, so yeah. Okay, we are interested in our turn decision. Our opponent bets 325, and I was wondering what 7x combos I can continue. And not only what 7x combos, but how many of those as well. Okay, 7x combos, third pair that is. And as we see, all the low 7x we fold, and we only continue with 7x combos plus a gut shot, or with an overcard. And we pretty much do not have any ace7, king7 combos, because we mostly check raise them, and we don't have low 7x combos because of the short stacks. Now I wonder what hands do we check shove, or we even check shove full house, jack 7. Well, because there are many river cards that button would not like, and we won't be able to get our value. And as for our bluffs, hands like Queen 10 with Queen of Diamonds preferably. For our flush draws, we shove Queen High flush draws, we shove King High flush draws, and double gut shots. King 10 has 2 gut shots. And why do we prefer to shove Queen High flush draw instead of like 6-5 of diamonds? The thing is that there are some big diamond hands in our opponent's range, and by shoving King High or Queen High flush draw, we reduce the number of hands he can call by blocking his high flush draws, and we increase the number of bluffs in his range. But when we shove 6-5 of diamonds or any other low diamond hand, we can easily be dominated. So low flush draws are not as good for shoving. Yeah, he calls with all the higher flush draws, and even with hands like King 10 without a flush draw. And it's quite grim for hands like 6-5 of diamonds. And let's see what happens if we call our opponent's bet on the turn and we have, for example, deuce of clubs on the river. And what do we do with our 7x hands? By the way, we now have a leading range of 25%. We have these low busted flush draws we can use as a bluff. And I assume we would also donk bet with some 9x hands. Well, give me a second. Let's see. One moment. Some 9x hands, even some 7x hands. These hands we use as a bluff, because the villain's range is pretty linear at that point. He has some hands in there that he has to bluff catch. Like for example, if he bluffed with combos like ace deuce, ace 3, ace 4. And he shouldn't bluff a lot, because it's very easy to call a 2.5 BBs. It's very easy for solvers to do, and it's very easy to do in real life. And yeah, when big blind donk bets on the river, those hands are indifferent now for the small blind. He of course can still raise with aces, kings, queens for thin value, and some bluffs too, but it would be much more interesting with deeper stacks, because then he could have incorporated more bluffs into his range. He pretty much always calls king queen, he sometimes folds king 10, and he uses king 6, king 5 as a bluff. And in terms of equity, with king 5 he only has 15%, and he has to bluff catch with hands like ace deuce, and he only has 17% equity. And now if he raises against this donk bet, then of course we fold all the bluffs, but even a 7x hands we call, because it is such a small raise. Pot odds are way too good to even fold hands like 7x. Let's now check a different river card, not deuce of clubs, but let's say a king of spades. What then? Okay, no leading range here, because small blind has a lot of king x combos in his range. When deuce comes on the river, then our 7x and 9x hands are right in the middle. Right in the middle of things, meaning that our opponent either has a nut combo, like Jack-X and better, or he has some hands that he used as a bluff on the previous street, but now he has to use as a bluff catcher against a small bet, and he would probably never use them as a bluff on the river if we check. But when a king shows up on the river, he still has hands like ace deuce, ace 3 and ace 4, but many of his potential bluffing hands are now improved to top pair. So yeah, no leading range for us. And now let's see if we call any 7x hands against a bet on the river. 8-7 sometimes, 9-7 blocking 2 full houses, 10-7 blocking straights. And yeah, for a river spot, we actually call a lot of third pairs. But then again, for us to call with all those 7x hands in the real game, we have to face an opponent who would actually use those ace 4, ace 3 and ace deuce hands as a bluff on the river. But when I imagine such a spot in the real game, I can clearly see my opponent betting those hands for value, but I can see him betting those hands as a bluff. Because ace high combo has some showdown value, and yeah, we see 35% equity for ace deuce. So he should bluff a hand with 35% equity just because he has no worse hand in his range. And of course it is very unlikely that we see any of that in the real game, but anyway it gives us perspective, it gives us a good understanding of what's going on in terms of ranges. And this program is very useful for range exploring. Yeah, you can see what you should do with a certain hand, but I prefer to see how the whole ranges look. Bluffing range, value range. Oh, this spot is actually quite interesting, it's still fresh in my mind. I was thinking in this hand if I should lead bet shove on the river as a bluff with my ace-hex hand. Again, ace-high combo, lots of equity, but on the other hand, on this runout we have not so many potential bluffing combos. Some of our flush draws we would shove on the turn, we would shove some combo draws, Probably we only have some ace-high flush draws in our calling range on the turn, so we have to use those hands at least sometimes as a bluff, even if those hands have decent equity. And by the way, in the actual hand I ended up checking, so I didn't convince myself to shove, even though I was considering it, but in the end I've decided that it is way too thin. And again, the sizes changed a little bit, but it's not a big deal. And as we see, he never supposed to bet with those hands. And if he does, then we can think of the ways we can exploit it. For example, we can check shove wider as a bluff, specifically against protection bets like this, or we can call on the turn and then check shove on the river. But this one is a little iffy. And finally, on the river, we have a lot of shoving, and EVs actually run quite close. Let's take a look. And yeah, we use a lot of ace-x combos as a bluff because we have tons of 9x combos we want to value shove. And we do not have a lot of potential bluffs, and look, even ace-10 that we call on the turn, we now use as a bluff. Because the button decided to bet on the turn, let's take a look at our defending range against his bet. Let's pick different groups of hands. First of all, let's see what happens with combo draws. Yeah, a lot of combo draws we check shove, some flush draws we check shove on the turn, and even some of those open-enders we check shove on the turn. So we don't have those to bluff on the river. But of course we have some of those in our check calling range, just in case a heart comes up on the turn, we should have some bluffs. We would probably have a donk betting range on a hard turn, so we need some potential bluffs, of course. And yeah, we also call a lot of ace-x hands, and then we use them as a bluff shove on the river, and it seems a little wild, but it's okay according to GTO. And if we take a look at our equity, we see that we have 46% equity with ace-8, and we just shove it as a bluff. And our opponent folds some king-x combos, he folds aces, ace-king. He still calls with 7x's, but if we choose a larger sizing, what then? Still calls. But all those 7x combos are basically indifferent to calling or folding. Okay, this hand I am very curious if we have to call any 4x combos on the river. And how big our donking range should be if we have one, and what hands we use to donk bet bluff. Well, actually I have an idea of how our value donking range and bluff donking range should look like. But I'm really curious if we should check call any 4x combos on the river, considering shallow stacks and the fact that we should probably check raise a lot of 9x combos on the flop. We even check raise some of our 4x combos for board coverage. Yeah, everything is fine according to solver. I mean, everything is standard, no mistakes, but let's take a look at the ranges. Okay, of all the 4x combos, we only call king 4 on the river sometimes, and we even fold some of our 6x combos. 9x we mostly call, but not every time also. And our donking range on the river is about 20%. Let's take a look at that. Well, yeah, we use some of our 4x hands as a bluff. Jack 4 with Jack of Hearts, King 4, Queen 4 with King and Queen of Hearts. We even donk bet some of our 4x flushes. Oh, for 3 with a heart, that's an interesting hand to use as a bluff. So we even turn some of our 2-pair combos into bluff. No 7-8 combos, that's interesting. Probably we check shove all of them on the turn if we float them in the first place on the flop. Let's take a look. Oh yeah, we don't even have 8-7 of spades combos, only the ones with backdoor flush draw, so we definitely never float on the flop with 8-7 offsuit. And let's see if we should don't bet our flushes on the river or not. If we check on the big blind, small blind, he checks back a lot of his top pairs. And if we think that he would bet those, then we shouldn't probably don't bet our flushes, because if we bet, he's indifferent to call in with all of those ace-x combos. But if we check, not only he is going to bet those, but he will also add some bluffs. So that way we can get a lot of extra EV. Now let's take a look how often do we check raise on the flop with our 9x combos. Well, actually not that often, about 50%. But what if we change the stack size? It was around 13 BBs in this hand, but let's see what happens with like 10 BBs. And yeah, it's also interesting to see what happens with our 4x combos with shorter stacks. Okay, we now check raise 9x combos more often. And of course, this leaves us with much less combos of 9x to the river after we check call the flop. Because a lot of those, as we have seen, end up in the check shoving range on the flop. Well, the strategy is pretty much the same bluffs, same shoves with flushes, and we have no 8-7 combos because stacks are shorter, we don't have enough equity, so yeah, our bluffs are basically our 4x hands. 4x hands with a heart. And yeah, now we have to check all more 4x combos since we have less 9x combos. And there's no difference between calling 6x and 4x against a polar range. The only thing is that with a 4x combo we block a little more 2-pair combos. And with shorter stacks, let's take a look at our opponent's betting range on the river. Yeah, with shorter stacks he now bets all of those ace-x combos, simply because his opponent has to call wider with shorter stacks. So yeah, in this case, betting ace-x hands is more profitable for the big blind. And this is how I analyze my hand histories, how I analyze interesting spots. I try to see the whole picture, how the ranges interact. And yeah, if in the previous example Queen 4 was a pure fold, now we see that we are indifferent to call in with this hand. And also we can try to find the points of indifference. With 12 BB stacks, we see that program prefers betting 4 BBs for the small blind on the turn. Well, of course, bet sizing choice depends a lot on SPR. And if he bets 6 BBs on the river, yeah, we see the movement in our 4x combos. And again, a lot of 9x combos check shoving a flop, so we need to continue with our 4x combos. King 4, for example, is a pure call, and with 13 BBs it was a mix. And small 4x combos do not call at all. And if you want to analyze some abstract spot, if you want to input the spot yourself, you can go here, View, Spin&Go, then you choose the situation you are interested in, like small blind versus big blind, and then you just set up the tree the way you want. All the ranges, all the possibilities, everything is right here. You can also upload histories right here in the cloud. I use this feature sometimes, but usually I mark hands that are really interesting in Poker Tracker, and then I analyze them specifically. But if you want, you can upload your database right here, and it's actually quite fast, and you can analyze and go through all of your mistakes. You will have a list of your deviations from optimal play, and you can sort it the way you want it, so yeah, it's very handy. I would highly recommend this program for anyone who likes to analyze his game in solvers. Everything here is really fast. Uploading fast, building trees really fast. In InstaGTO, what I didn't like, sometimes the ranges were calculated weirdly. I saw some hands and ranges that are not supposed to be there, definitely. Some weird weights also, and here everything is perfect. By the way, you can use the colors of your preference, you can analyze 200 hands per day, and you can upload a database of 75,000 hands. And I actually don't think that you would be able to analyze 200 hands in one day. So yeah, this is how I do it. And I'm in touch with the guys who developed this software, and as far as I'm concerned, they're going to develop it even more. They're going to add new features over time, and basically this is only the beginning. And again, if everyone worked with Skier, this is a very good alternative, in my opinion. The functional part is very similar, and you will not get distracted by some features that you're not familiar with.